So here it is, 1972 International F1800A or Loadstar 1800. It's got a 392 gas V8. It is very slow, very worn out. We rebuilt the carburetor. I did cap and rotor, points and condenser, get off here kitty cat, and spark plugs. I'm having a hard time sourcing spark plug wires, so I'm going to make my own out of copper core 8mm race wire. Tandem axle with a power divider, which the guy we bought it from didn't even realize that. He thought it was live drive like an army truck. Turns out the power divider cable was frozen, so it was essentially a live drive truck until I took it out. There was a giant dent in the roof, hence the ghetto marker lights in the middle, but we fixed that up with some of Phil Swift's finest Flex Seal. Worked out pretty good. She's got a Bristol Donald dump body. It's 11 foot. Had a tarp roll on the top of it. We took that off. I think the body's older than the truck, but it's a subframe dump. And it's kind of cool because it's got the original air cylinder to release the tailgate that still functions perfectly fine and still dumps perfectly fine. I had to put a new U-cup seal in the one hoist cylinder. One thing that's cool, it's upside down, but it says Bethlehem there. Good old American Pennsylvania steel made that subframe. Truck's got a double frame, walking beam suspension. As you can see, the beam bushings are pretty worn out, but we have no rubbage on the frame rails yet. I went through the tail lights and everything, got everything all sorted out. All of our lights are working, oils are all good, switched around a bunch of tires. They got more dry rot on them than just about any tire on the road today, but they're probably older than me. The truck runs good. I'd really love to see the day that I put 10 new tires on it, but I don't really know if that's going to happen. The engine is pretty gutless. We were already daydreaming about putting a superior replacement engine and main transmission in here, because from what I've read online, which we all know you can't believe everything, I guess it's getting hard to find parts for these old 5-speed transmissions. But yeah, we rebuilt the carburetor, got a new battery. I went through the whole fuel system. We were going to replace the fuel pump, but it turns out the one that we ordered that said it fit a 392 gas V8 did not. So we dealt with that, put solder seal on the radiator. No leaks since then. I had to bypass the heater core, unfortunately, but the interior of the truck is actually pretty nice still. I had my phone on the wrong zoom setting there. It's actually one of the first videos I've really filmed with this phone. So it's pretty nice inside. I put this saddle blanket seat cover on here. Let me hop up inside. The floor's really not even too rotted out. Whatever this blue paint is, it must have been like the cancer causing stuff from back in the day, because it's really a pretty solid truck. The odometer says 40,273 miles. It's gone up since we got it, and I have a really hard time believing that it rolled all the way over. But my heater box is completely rotted out. I have no heat. Somebody was playing target practice with a BB gun about probably 3 decades ago and broke the windshield, and you can see by the stripes that somebody was running it plenty after that. The passenger side window was also victim to BB gun target practice, but I keep a rubber mud flap over it when we're not using the truck. So over here, the red handles to engage the PTO, black handles to dump. This is our parking brake. It's got a drum brake on the drive shaft on the back of the transmission, believe it or not. I'd love to have maxi chambers on there, but as little as we're going to use the truck, probably won't matter. Then we got our 5-speed main, which has a stupid shift pattern. So it's first, second, third, and fourth, and then all the way to the right. Up is low and back is reverse. And from what I've read, low and reverse are on the shaft that is affected by running the transmission with low oil, which definitely occurred. It's definitely hurting, but I'm gonna run it anyway. And then we got the main, or the auxiliary transmission here, which shows the shift pattern for that, which is right next to the tailgate valve. The lights all work, everything works. I need to get a new cable for the power divider, as I mentioned, but I think the amp gauge works, the oil pressure gauge works. Speedometer is not accurate because when we drove it home, it said I was doing 45, and my brother told me when we got home that I was pulling away from him, and his speedometer said 55. It's governed at, I don't know what the door says, but just from driving it, you hold your foot to the floor, it runs at 3,400 RPMs, and from what I've read, you can run it there all day. Temp gauge works, air pressure gauge works, fuel gauge does not work, but I'm not too worried about that. I was having a lot of issues with the turn signals working when we first got the truck, but now they work every time you turn them on, and the four-ways work as well. So we've got all working lights, which is very important to me. I like trying to be as legal as possible, especially rolling down the road in something that looks like this. Somebody put newer brakes on it before they parked it. So luckily, without having maxi chambers on there, the brakes weren't acting as a parking brake. It didn't get stuck and sitting, so we just patched up the one airline in the back that somebody clearly drove into with a forklift and got it running good enough to drive it home, and put a lot of work into it. But the goal with this truck is to haul the grain from the fields. It's got a pintle hitch on the back, and I'm going to be welding a 2-inch adapter onto, like a 2-inch receiver hitch sleeve onto the tongue of my gravity wagon and putting one of those 2-inch receiver pintle rings they make. I should probably show it to you guys instead of just explaining it. This is what I was talking about, as I probably interrupt the video. Goes into a 2-inch receiver. It's the perfect size for this. And I'm gonna just weld a sleeve onto the top of the tongue and pull it down the road. Nice and simple. But I'm gonna pull the gravity wagon behind the truck so I can fill the truck and the gravity wagon and be able to get the grain off the field all by myself. There's a bunch of crap in here right now. I gotta seal a bunch up before it gets corn or soybeans in it, but I'm actually going to pick up a load of scrap with it tomorrow just to put some miles on it before I need it. Found some really cool stuff inside of it. Found these antique safety things like the triangles that you're required to carry now. Well, that's what these are from back in the day. I've never seen anything like that. If anybody else has, chime in the comments, because if somebody's looking for something like this, I'd love to see them go to a collector or somebody that's gonna appreciate them. I sprayed a bunch of WD-40 on them, but these guys are pretty rusty. But there's two of this style and then one of the fold-out style. Really neat. And it had an old, there's no name, there's a nameplate on it, but you can't see it. But this was the crank for the tarp on the top of it. There's a hand crank somewhere around here that goes into this slot, and believe it or not, the brake on this is a spring. So you pull the spring towards you to release it, and then when you got it where you want it, you let it release, and the spring tension is what wraps around the shaft and holds the tail, or not the tailgate, the tarp in position. I'm topping off the oil and checking the fluids right now, and then I'm going to try to put my phone in a position where you guys can hear this thing rumble, because it sounds pretty cool with that little tiny race bullet muffler on there. So I'm going to get back to it. So I'm down here checking the transmission fluid, or transmission oil, in the main transmission, and I figured it'd be a chance to show everybody the underside of good old Porky the International here. It's a twin stick, so that's our brownie box, or whatever you want to call it. It's underdrive, direct, and overdrive, and it's got these two linkages that run back. Kind of a crappy, where does it end? There it is right there. See, I gotta get the camera seeing what my eyes are seeing. But these two linkages go back into the top cover, and that's what changes your gears. It's stiff as can be and very hard to shift. Letting it warm up is definitely essential to driving. The PTO pump has a natural corrosion inhibitor that leaks from it eternally, such as the transmissions, which is why I'm checking the main box, because in a moment I'd rather not admit, but I will. I'm a big man. I ran it without freaking oil in it because we bought this thing in a field and it had been sitting for who knows how long. Guy told us it ran 6 years ago. I think it was 36 years ago. But anyway, the main transmission's hurting. And I guess it's a pretty common thing for these trucks when they run low on oil in the main 5-speed transmission. They tend to eat some bearings and shafts and such. So we got the 5-speed main with the 3-speed auxiliary. I put a big 3-inch pipe on here with a what do they call it? They call it a race bullet mini muffler. It's really just a resonator, and it sure resonates. It is quite loud. When we used it to haul the maiden voyage load of hay, the eardrums were definitely ringing for a couple days afterwards. Alright, now I'm gonna try to put the phone up there. A good view or not. It takes 2 hands to open the door. The little details. Like I said, it's not warmed up yet. It's usually pretty perky. It doesn't have any choking or stuttering or hesitation. I think it sounds pretty good though. Hear something making noise in there, but believe it or not, it's the air compressor. I do plan on pulling the valve covers and checking the valves and all that though, but hopefully I'll get my brother to do some filming of me when I finally got this old girl in action and get some glory shots of her going down the road. But that's it for today. And I guess it really wouldn't be a Josh Stevens video if I didn't say hi to the cows. They're in their new barnyard with their new heated Ritchie water, or the Omni Fount 3 they call it, but we just got this project done. We still got to put in gates down here, but it's all pitched to the end down there. And they're calling that the manure stacking area. So the theory is we're going to scrape all the manure down to the other end, store it there till we have appropriate conditions to be spreading it. Have a nice little fence here with a little chainway for us to get in and out, nice and easy. The fountain turned out really nice. We put a pimple board on the wall there. Still got to finish up the final details, but the coolest part is this big H-bunk we put in. It's the widest one they make, I believe, 4 foot wide. So we can just throw entire bales of hay or baleage inside of it, and we've got a nice feed lane down here. That's donkey right there. Turned out pretty good though. I guess there's future plans in the works, because things are always changing on a farm. Anybody knows if you're trying to get ahead, you're in an ever-evolving state of progress, or at least that's the goal. Got these cool spring-loaded steel gates down here, which we believe will be sufficient enough. Got 2 going across the stacking area, and there's 2 more on that side. And this is what they call the filter strip area. From here down to the road there's a little fence. You can hardly see it, our temporary fence that we do with PVC posts. But this is where any runoff is supposed to go and filter back into the ground before it goes across the street. Because right across the road there's a creek that runs right into the Wallkill River, which is the whole reason that this project was started to begin with, is because we wanted to make sure any environmental concerns were taken into account and it was built properly, because we're firm believers in do it right the first time. But thanks for watching.